everyone, and welcome to another Project Atla video. Now, a quick word kind of describing what's going on, and I'm sorry for the black screen, but I'll explain in just a second. I had to flip the normal order, so we're actually going to be going through the time-lapse first, and then the kind of finished product, because I had some crashing errors, essentially, when I was recording, and it screwed up when I was actually recording the video. So I didn't record everything. So as a result, we'll be going through the time lapse, and I'll actually be with you the entire time, kind of explaining what's going on, because it's kind of confusing. So I apologize for if you didn't want to hear my voice too much, but I want to make sure you understand what exactly is going on before you get all confused, and then we'll get into what it currently looks like. So, starting off, let us start up the video. So, as you can see, we started off with the Kuka. We're starting to actually put in the Kuka. This feels a bit faster than it's supposed to, but that might just be me. So as you can see, we're starting to get all the kind of Kuka stuff going in, and I had an interesting time because I was trying to figure out how to best deal with the programming stuff. So like the scenes and that kind of stuff. As you remember from the previous video, when I did this last time, I figured it out by doing the a scene chip, and then essential. And when I mean chip, I mean like that wall with all the stuff on it, and then having a second chip that's specifically for scenes. And you'll see I changed that up a bit later. So as you can see here, I'm actually starting off with programming this thing. Actually, I decided that it would probably be best if I start off by figuring out what exactly I need to do in order to get the arm essentially in the correct position for unloading the coaster car, because that's probably going to be the biggest challenge in my mind, and honestly it was. I had a bit of an interesting time figuring all this out. So it involved me running around a lot, so that's why you see stuff flashing like crazy, and I greatly apologize for that, but it just happened to turn out that way, and I'm very sorry, but stuff got really funky when I was trying to figure this all out. So also, and it's driving me nuts, I'm hearing a background buzz, and you might be hearing that as well in the video. I don't know what's going on, but there's a weird buzzing sound that is being emitted by Scrap Mechanic, and I'm trying to track down where it's coming from. I think that there's a motor running somewhere that's not supposed to be running, and it's like way in the distance or something. So I'm trying to figure that one out, and hopefully by the next video I'll have it fixed. At least halfway through the video, because I've already started recording the next video. Because it's going to be an interesting video, I'll put it that way. Because I'm actually getting back to the proper coaster track in the next video. So as you can see, I'm trying to figure out how I need to have this all set up in order to have the arm in the correct location for unloading it. And I think I even moved it again, because as you notice, I had to move it back from where it was originally. I had to move it even farther back, I think. So it was an interesting time. I did flip the entire rotation of the like which direction of travel the arm was going in, so that was an interesting time having to figure that one out. Or maybe I didn't. I think I did leave it as is. So I'm aware that theoretically the arm would if the motor's turned off, it shouldn't move, but after playing with Scrap Mechanic for as long as I have, you learn to not trust the motor being off anymore. So I decided to also put in physical stops, because this is something that you don't want to be like off. You don't want it to be. Let me rephrase that. You don't want it to be misaligned due to the physics being just strange. So I decided to go ahead and just put in some physical stops on this one. And you'll see that I put in some semi-physical stops. They're non-logic stops, essentially, is how I classify them in this situation. So you can see I pulled out one of the cars just so I could figure out how long they are, so I can figure out just how I need to make the track on the end of the robot arm. See it bouncing around like crazy. I haven't actually watched this footage back yet, so this is really weird to watch just how jittery I was during this entire section. Jeez. So as you can see, I was trying to get the arm as well as I could. Turns out I wasn't able to. So I went ahead and moved it back and had to move it up. And here I'm trying to figure out, okay, what angle, because I was thinking just having it at an angle so it just, gravity just makes the car roll off. Turns out it doesn't work that easily. So I decided to just have it flat, and I have a method of getting it off of the arm. And you'll be seeing that in the next video. Because I'm essentially redesigning the car, how the logic of the car works, the coaster car works, so that's all that. I had to do some math because I'm trying to figure out what the angles need to be in order for it to actually still be parallel with the ground. And it turns out it was a bit nastier than I intended, or anticipated it being, so. Number logic. So, this is me just trying to do what I can to make the entire thing work correctly. Or not work correctly, but like line up correctly. This is where I started to put in the stops. So and this is actually something you'll find on most roller coasters actually. If there is a section of track that swings out like this, you will almost always have some sort of a locking mechanism that locks the track into place for when the cars are coming through it. And since this is a Kuka arm, not only do you need to lock it in place, but you also need to lock it in place both in the rotation axis and the planar axis, I guess is the best way of putting it. So in the 3 planes, you can't have it moving and you can't have it rotating. And thankfully, because it's not directly above the point of rotation, I don't need to worry too much about it rotating. I just need to mostly worry about it moving in the 3 planes, up, left, right, and forward, back, up, down, I suppose. Sorry. So this was my quote-unquote ingenious invention that allows for that. And you'll see later on, it does in fact actually work. It works very well. I'm very pleased with how well it works. So when you are building a Kuka Arm, or rather a armature that is moving from multiple points and is carrying a payload, you have to be able to understand like the forces that are kind of you're working with. And one of the forces that I had not considered, or rather I wasn't thinking about, is the fact that the entire track was not actually even with the main axis of rotation. It was actually off-center, which meant that no matter what, the coaster car when it's sitting on the arm would never be perfectly balanced, which is a bit of a problem. So that was me just changing that, and I didn't really change anything on the ramp. I actually just changed base itself kind of ends, I suppose, where it just stops. It's just a lot easier that way. And I tried to make this support look as realistic as possible, like a actual support you would find for something like this. I think it looks okay. It's just not particularly impressive looking, but yeah, it works. This is me trying to figure out, like, because I was trying to figure out what was going on, because I was trying to reset what scene it was in, and just could not for a life me figure out why it was weird, why it was acting weird. So, went ahead and changed that. This is me trying to, because I wanted there to be an easy, quick way of testing the Costa Arm coming in and out of the Kuka Arm, the Kuka Arm coming in and out of the unload section. So I made kind of a really basic track loop, I suppose, and part of the track loop is finished. Ooh, hello, I need to take care of that. So sorry about that, folks. Gotta have that on. Oh yeah, so anyways, part of the Kuka Arm track is permanent, which is the track that is directly after the unload, and you'll see for reasons why that's the case. But a lot of this is actually pretty much just for temporary testing of the entire coaster, or the entire movement of the Kuka Arm, particularly specifically the movement of not the base but just the arm's positions. And oh boy, let me tell you, this track is actually, had I known how much trouble this track would have been, I probably wouldn't have actually built it. It has given me, those turns have been giving me so much grief. And even now, every once in a while, they'll still give me grief. So, joy of joys. I'll put it that way. So as you can see, now that it's able to finally make a full rotation, I had to essentially have it run through the scenes correctly. So, and again, you see it once again gets caught on those turns. So I just kind of developed a really slipshot or slapshot method of dealing with it, and it kind of works. I'll put it that way. It's not perfect, but it works. So it's one of those I'll live with it kind of situations, in my opinion. So, this track has been, and I really don't want to like say, oh, this was really hard, but it really wasn't. It was just me being unbelievably stupid when I was building it. And I'm still like kind of hitting myself thinking, why the hell did I do it in such a stupid way? But it works. It does what it needs to do. It tests that the Kuka Arm is able to fully make a loop, is able to go through the turns, and that it is able to slip into the unload station just fine. Or rather, when it's in the correct position, it's able to slip into the unload section just fine. Which at the end of the day is really what you need, so. I think that's the last time I have to fix it, but don't quote me on that. So I think that's when it finally works. And this is when I was trying to figure out what was going on with the scene selection, because I had kind of forgotten between the episodes how the scene selections worked correctly. So I had to kind of play around, and eventually I figured out what I was doing really stupidly. So So you can see that it completely and totally missed. It was in essentially the completely wrong scene, and I eventually realized that it was allowing for one extra scene that shouldn't exist. So I think that's right about when I kind of figured it out. And then this is me painting the track, because when you've got something heavy moving like this, you want safety. Especially since it's something heavy that's moving autonomously, that's also moving something heavily on a very long, essentially moment arm. And that's kind of a problem. It's a very dangerous situation, so you need to kind of deal with that. And this is when I started to like really struggle with slopes. I've been, and that's partially what the next video is actually going to be with, is me dealing with a lot of the turns and slopes. They're kind of going crazy right now because I decided to redesign something. So that's, the onus is kind of on me on that one, and just trying to figure that all out. So as you can see, I have designed, it's not very clear right now, but this is a essentially a storage area for the Kuka Arm. And you can see this is when I start to figure something out, which is essentially that I don't need there to be a programming card like that at all. What I can actually do, because this essentially all came from the fact that I wanted the ability to change what scene it was at the arm itself, which are those two buttons that you see me placing down. So I decided to eventually just take that entire scene card out of the equation and just put all of that programming on the Kuka Arm itself. So now each Kuka Arm has its own independent setup like that, and now I don't, every single time I put up a new Kuka Arm, I don't need to add in another chip like that, or another program chip like that. So I think it's a good idea in the long run. It was just kind of confusing when I started it, and there's still a problem with it, which still bugs me. I cannot decrement the scene. You'll see later that I tried all kinds of things. I cannot make the scene go down by one. I can make it go up by one just fine, because that's what it normally does anyways. But I am not able to make it go down by one. So I eventually just got rid of the decrement button and just replaced it with a reset button that just sets it down to 0. And you can see this is right about when I realized that I've got a problem somewhere, but I can't lower it any. So I tried a bunch of different setups. I tried painting them. I could not for life figure out what was going on. So I just got rid of that functionality, for better or worse, I suppose. But part of what I'm doing with this whole rebuild, because you may be thinking, okay, now how do you get that information back to the scene cards, or the scene chips? I reset the entire, or I redid how the communications work, essentially between the Kuka Arm and the scene chips. Now, what it's doing is it's actually just constantly sending the Kuka Arm number. That's all those cards are doing. What I've changed, however, is what channel it's being sent on. So if you can see, the color channel is black, just as it was previously, but now the number channel is actually what scene it is, and that's essentially changing it so that if no Kuka Arm is in that scene, nothing's being sent across that channel. So that inherently just means it's being a 0 is being sent. But if it's in that next scene, if it's in, say, scene 1, it's going to be setting the channel to 1 on the black color channel, and it's going to be sending that Kuka Arm's number. So it's just a quicker way of kind of dealing with the whole situation than having to constantly add on more and more stuff to the scene chips, like with the previous design, which honestly I'm not sure why I didn't think of it this way when I first did it. I was probably really Well, I was going crazy when I did it last time, actually, and now I remember why. I was kind of going a bit wonky in the head, just from trying to figure out the programming. So that's the. You may have noticed the that piston from earlier with the little red block on it, and that is the semi-mechanical stop. So there's 3 stops in my opinion. There's a hard manual stop, which is something that blocks the path. There's a logic stop, which is just being sent across I keep wanting to call them internet chips, but they're really not. They're wireless communication chips, or wireless communication cards, I think is what they're actually referred to in the game. Which is, there's no physical things that are occurring to do that. And then there's the semi-mechanical stops, which are what I'm placing in right now, which is that they don't directly touch the car, but they are mechanical in nature, and they are changing. They are stopping the car using that some sort of a sensor, essentially. And see, they worked very well. Actually, I was kind of happy with how well they've worked. So I'm just putting in the indicators for when they're in that like section block, I suppose, or state that. What's the term that I'm looking for here? Storage block. There we go. When they're in that storage block, I put that like black border around them, so you know where the car is actually going to be during that. And I also put in the caution tape border around the quote-unquote programming block, which is essentially where I put all of the stuff, or it's essentially the block that the car is supposed to be in when you're altering the programming for, say, a scene, or you're testing the functionality or what have you. It's essentially the maintenance block, if you will. So this is me adding in some extra functionality to this last block, so that it will only be able to release the Kuka Arm from that specific block if and only if I've got the dispatch switch on, and the switch is indicating that it is switched to the storage track switch, and also it's fully done the crossover, essentially. So I've got a sensor that I think I put in this video, but I might have not have, that essentially says, yes, there is a track that is connected to me right now. It's just some extra safety. And realistically, you would have something just like that in real life, but because you're dealing with something that's digitally physical, there we go, you don't always think about that kind of safety stuff. There you go. This is me. I think that was when I was trying to figure out like line of sights, I think is what it was. I'm not entirely certain what I was doing there, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a roof in the station building, so you still wouldn't be able to see it anyways. So I don't know what I was doing when I was doing that. And as you can see, there's like a little thing, like an opening that the car passes through, and you're probably trying to figure out what that's for. That is actually there in case, for some weird reason, the Kuka Arm isn't able to release the coaster car from its track. It is there to be, and for some reason you need to evacuate the ride because of that, or what have you. It's actually essentially a walkway to allow for a cast or a crew member to essentially unload the coaster. So here's me just trying to build up the doors for the storage area. And I'm aware that there's no way that the people that would be riding would ever normally see this sort of stuff. but I'm trying to avoid light leakage from the storage area if for some reason the ride is operating and there's a mechanic doing some sort of work in the storage area. You need to ensure that no light is being leaked into the normal track area. So that was my solution to it, essentially, is to build those giant doors, and I truly do mean giant. And you'll see when I get to the live footage when I cross over. You'll see they're big. Like, I don't think you appreciate quite how big those are. The time lapse. So as you can see, I'm kind of placing some blocks down, like in that little gap between the main door and the ground. Again, that was mostly just in service of trying to reduce light leakage. It kind of works because you still need to keep that gap in there regardless. Excuse me, I had some soda earlier. You still need to avoid that light leakage, but I feel like that small amount of light being passed through in that little crevice, I feel like that's more than okay, because I've got pretty much where the light sources would normally be kind of covered. It would just be kind of the light reflecting off of the ground and the various objects in there, so it wouldn't be very big intensity, so it would be a pretty dark area still, which is exactly what I want for a situation like this. And in real life, you would want it just like that as well, so. So I think you're starting to kind of get a rough idea on how big these doors actually are. I'm still amazed that the game is okay with how big they are. But miracles happen, I suppose. So we'll just go with it. I'm not going to look at gift horse in the mouth in this case. Oh, so here we go. Here's the sensors that I was putting in. You can see I put the sensors down for the switch there. And I try to put even more sensors and more what are called interlocks, so essentially safety measures to ensure that nothing goes wrong. And I think I went a bit too crazy with them because I suddenly had a situation where I couldn't dispatch the car regardless of any sort of situation. Or alternatively, it would always dispatch. So I screwed something up somewhere, and I just could not for life figure out what was entirely going on there. So I just kind of left it be. And maybe one day I'll finally get around to fixing that. So this is not something that I think would actually exist in real life, and let me explain. What I'm essentially building is a method to allow the mechanics to pass through or across the track. I'm 90% certain that in real life there would be like some sort of a bridge that would exist that would allow for people to cross over the car itself. It would be high enough to cross over the car. However, I don't think in a normal situation the Kuka Arm would be this big either. I built and I didn't really truly appreciate this until I started building those doors, but that Kuka Arm, when it's fully extended, is actually maybe about 3 times as big as what's in the Harry Potter's Forbidden Journey. So, and to give you a rough idea, I think I measured at one point in time, it would be roughly the height of 3 stories tall. Just to give you kind of an idea on how tall that thing actually is when it's fully extended like that. I didn't intend it to be that tall. I mostly wanted the ability to have as much freedom of movement as possible. I think I accidentally kind of went overboard though on like ensuring that fact. So I think right about here is where I had a crash error. So I think it was actually the second time this passes through this area. Nope, it was right here actually. So now let's get into what stuff currently looks like. So welcome to Project Atla in real time. You'll notice there's a couple of changes, particularly this right here. As I mentioned earlier, I have started working on the next video, so you may see a couple of things that may look a tiny bit different. Like I've actually got the block section for the whole for unload all set up. But you can see kind of how things are looking. And again, there would be some sort of a facade right here to kind of hide the fact that that's there. So let's go in here, and I've changed around some stuff, and I've made a lot of changes in how logic is being sent around the system. You'll notice that there's a lot less connections from the main control area. I've started using a lot of these wireless cards to just cut down on connections. So essentially, all of these are block indications for each block. So this is block 1 is load, block 2 is pre-lift, block 3 is lift, and going on from there. And it allows me to essentially cut down connections, declutter all the connections going all across the area. And it also allows me to very quickly tap into the system and figure out what's going on from theoretically anywhere as I need it. But as what kind of started it all was these two right here. I wanted a way to be able to like essentially e-stop the entire ride, everything from theoretically anywhere. And I wanted to do it in such a way that didn't look like the entire place was just a giant connection of spider webs. So I have these 2 channels right here, and this is actually, it's hard to see in the darkness, so let me go down to this one right down here. This is the dark red, and channel 0 is the e-stop channel. So if that gets any sort of signal other than nothing, so anything, literally anything, will immediately cause an e-stop across the entire ride. And that's not just for the Kuka arms, that's the coaster, the station, the Kuka area, or the Kuka arm scenes, everything. And channel 1, as you may have seen earlier, is a indicator channel. So channel 1 essentially is e-stop active right now? And in this particular situation, I do not believe it is. Let me just verify on that. No, it is not active right now. So fantastic. So what is this little thing here? So as you may have kind of seen in the video earlier, I had a small problem of the arm being in the wrong position when it slid into the unload station, which is a bit of a problem because that needs the Kuka arm to be in a very specific scene, or else it's going to collide directly with the support system. And yes, I do need these supports. I found that the entire arm was weighing down, so when it's got a coaster car on it, so I needed to build something to kind of help alleviate some of that weight. So that's what this is. This is a scene checker, or I'm sure there's a couple other names that I could probably go with it, but I'm just going to call it a scene checker for now. Essentially what it does is it's hooked up to a sensor, specifically this sensor right here. And when that sensor is triggered, it'll report to this scene checker and ask, okay, there's something right here. Is whatever that's here right now supposed to be here? And what that means is that essentially, if there's a coaster, if it gets triggered and there isn't a car in scene blank, so in this case it's scene 1, but theoretically it'd be scene, I don't know, 42 or something like that. I don't know the actual number of scenes just yet. There's probably actually going to be a lot more than that. But essentially checks, is there a scene, is there a car in that scene? If not, it causes an instant e-stop. Because if it's not, if that coaster car that's not there is not in that scene, and it doesn't know what car the Kuka Arm car is, or what number it is, and it doesn't need to, theoretically. It just needs to know there's something here, is it supposed to be here? Or rather, is it in the correct position to be here? So if I walked over it right now, it would cause an instant e-stop across the entire ride, which, I mean, realistically, if you have somebody walking across this track under normal operation circumstances, you'd want to cause an e-stop situation right then and there. So that's what that's all about. Now, there's going to be a lot of these scene checkers probably in the close quarters areas where they need to be in very specific positions. I'm sorry. I'm saying scene and segment so often now it's starting to blur together. So as you can see here is the lovely scene chips, or yeah, the scene cards / scene chips, and they haven't really changed any. I do need to eventually put in some sort of a segment for controlling whether or not it should be running or not, and that's partially what this is. This is kind of a manual if you're in the main server area, which is where this area is. There is a main control board that lets you manually say, okay, this needs to be moving, which is what this whole thing is right now. And I think actually what it does is, yes, so this is actually, I'm wrong, this actually stops it. So you're able to individually stop one of the arms, saying, no, this one for whatever reason is out of commission right now. We cannot be moving this, but we don't know where it is in the track right now, essentially, which would be kind of a problem, as you can understand. And this right here is kind of a weird situation, and I'll kind of explain it in just a second. But essentially, this is the e-stop thing, or that e-stop situation, as I mentioned earlier, and this is essentially the overall Kuka Arm running. Now, what I mean by that, and you can see just how massive these things are. I really wish I had a measuring tape so I could figure out just how tall these things are. Because, oh my god, these are massive. But anyways, I'm getting off track. So let's go off track and go into the storage, shall we? So if we come around here, and again, a lot of these outside walls are kind of temporary, you can see just what the storage area looks like. And something that's not shown in the video that I added in post video, just jump over here, is I've actually added in these kind of hideaways for all the logic. Well, this one doesn't have any logic, but there's logic on the other one, to make it look like there's actually a piston there. Because probably it wouldn't actually be sliding into position like that, but for the sake of the argument, let's say it would be. That piston would be pushing it, essentially. So here you can see some more of the lovely e-stop logic. So each of these each of these blocks have an e-stop button that will immediately stop the entire ride should anything go horribly, horribly wrong. So for example, if I go ahead and say, let me actually turn these on so that it's upright. Let's say this one's clear to go. The semi-mechanical is in position, so I don't have to worry too much about that. Let me run over to here. Say that's all clear, all good and dandy. And let's say this suddenly... That's not how the game's supposed to be played. Oh, I know why. It's because I haven't restarted the Kuka area. Whoops-a-daisies. So as I said, there's a master on and off for the Kuka area in case you need to just independently turn the Kuka off. And that is this right here. Now, why are you saying that you cannot activate? Oh. Coaster area clear. Sorry. There we go. So now this should be able to start moving. And I'll kind of explain what I just did in just a second. But let's say this starts moving. Oh no, there's somebody in the path. Press the button and it immediately stops. And again, this occurs. This will be a system-wide e-stop, so all the Kuka arms would just stop. And I mean, there's obviously a tiny bit of downtime as the signal flows through the entire system, but I think you kind of get the gist of it. So as you can see, this is now stopped, and I am not able to resume it from where I currently am. And in fact, there is a specific procedure to reset the entire system. So I want to turn this off for the moment. And theoretically, I could probably turn it on, but I don't want to just for the sake of the argument. So you can see that now in the storage area, I can tell that everything stopped because this light is on, meaning that there's an e-stop situation. Cool. So I would probably report to the main control booth, and a lot of people would probably be reporting to the main control booth saying clear or situation clear or something like that. And when everything has been kind of checked off here, there would be something that would be occurring. You'd be here, turn the switch, reveal the e-stop button, or the clear. E-stop is now clear. Check all the blocks. Once the blocks are cleared, resume normal motion in coaster section, which is what this button does. Essentially means that coaster section is fully operational again. And then you would have somebody come down to the server room, and you can see that that has stopped the Kuka area. And you would check all the Kuka arms and say, okay, are the Kukas clear? Kuka is clear, press resume Kuka motion, and now everything works just dandily, or it should, assuming that I've programmed everything correctly. But let's just say, for the sake of the argument, I haven't. Let's just go ahead and verify. Yes, stuff is moving again. Very complex system of interlocks that I assure you are very realistic. That's exactly how stuff would be working. So as you can see, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is on, but it's not moving. That's because we need to open this switch up. And I haven't actually timed this yet, but it turns out that yes, it does perfectly time it correctly. That if nothing bad goes wrong, it does not reach the switch before it's finished switching. I had not tested that beforehand. That was me being stupid. I probably should have. But we can verify that yes, that is working as intended. Let me go ahead and close that. And as you can see, again, there's the massive piston. And these giant doors close. Very impressive. So, and again, a lot of this you saw kind of on camera, but again, there was a small bit of glitching. And you'll see in the next video some more stuff that I do to kind of reduce the glitching. I found a clear way to cause it, to kind of cause the game to crash. Hopefully, I've fixed that now based on what I've been doing during recording for 2 weeks from now for the next video. But we'll see. Hopefully everything goes correctly. If not, well, I've got bigger problems on my bucket list, I suppose. So, with that being said, we are clear to move into this block, and you'll see this everything kind of lining up. You can see that's now off, which means that there's something actually in this block right now. So you can see nothing stops. Very nice. Now have that stop. That locks into place. And you probably didn't see it because it was quick enough, and that's probably my fault. But if I jump onto here, you can see that there was some sensors, and you can see there's these little tabs which essentially just lock the car in place through all this logic, and there's one on either side, and it essentially checks to see is it fully locked in place, and if it's not fully locked in place, it will not be able to release that car under any circumstances, because that's just a great way to have a major problem. Let's be honest here. So that's what these are for, and they are measured correctly so that there's maybe an eighth of a third of a meter of play, to be quite honest. There's very, very, very little play. It's essentially there's literally no block of a play, or a third of a meter of play. So that's what all that does. This is not hooked up yet because I haven't really worked on the load station yet, which is probably be somewhere right about here. But we'll get there when we get there in the coaster track. So until then, this has been the lovely Kuka craziness. This has been Project Atla in general, in fact. And if you enjoyed watching this video and you want to see more of it, please, please, please leave a like, first of all, so I know that you're enjoying this. But also, leave a comment down below of what you enjoyed about it, or if you have any questions about the programming that I did, because I did kind of run through it somewhat quickly, and I can do a full video on everything that I've done, kind of breaking it down even more than what I did the first time around, because I didn't fully understand what I was doing when I first created this. So now that I've got a better feel for it, I can create a full video that breaks everything down into its tiniest parts so that you can understand it correctly if you want to create something like this on your own. But on top of that, please, please, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you get notified every single time I post up a new video of this series, Project Atla, or if you want to get notified of every time I post up a new video for my Stormworks project called The Crawler, which is essentially an underwater cruise ship. So if you're interested in that, make sure to hit that subscribe button, that bell icon, make sure it's set to everything. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.